Ready, Dave?
There is just one moon and one golden sun, and the smile means friendship to everyone. Though the mountains divide and the oceans are wide, it's a small world after all. It's a small world after all.
Well, that brings us to this week's episode.
So this is a big deal. Wow. We are up to their second album, Lincoln. Dave was shocked when I said it. There's a lot to talk about. Dave, you seem like you have something on your mind.
I think we both agree our second favorite album.
You know?
Do we? We've talked about this before. I'm pretty sure you've said that in the past.
I don't know if we should reveal this until we're done or not, with where it ranks, but
There's still some mystery.
yeah. Sometimes it's my first favorite, and sometimes.
Really?
So okay, here's what I think. I think it's their best album, but I think it's my second favorite album. That's what I think. My favorite album is yet to be discussed.
Okay.
So me and Dave took a long break. We had planned to take a break for New Year's.
But then Jordan had to go and get sick.
And then I got
Because he's not committed.
So it turned the break into a hiatus.
He's just not dedicated to this podcast. And I think you should all berate him for that. I didn't get sick.
Yeah.
I was ready to go.
So in that break, I listened to the album many times. I took a lot of notes and thoughts. And I was thinking this might just be really comparing it to the first album, but I even think comparing it to later albums, there's something really sweet about the music, like the chord progressions, the instrumentation, the arrangements. There's something, it's kind of has like a sweet, soulful, melodic sound, and a melodic sound in a sweet way that the first album is a little more angular and, for lack of a better term, wacky. Lincoln is like, with the exception of like one or two songs, Lincoln is really like them being like, we are really good songwriters.
I was going to say, I think there's a little bit of a leap, more than a little bit of a leap from the first to the second album. It's kind of amazing.
It's a huge thing. And I've got the Wikipedia, TMBG has this Lincoln press sheet that they put out to people.
Hey, Wikipedia.
Hey, Wikipedia. Flansburgh says, the big difference with Lincoln is that we've done hundreds of shows since that first record, so as instrumentalists and vocal performers and songwriters, we're just that much more developed. I think we've learned that our arrangements might actually be less fussy than they used to be. We tend to leave the kitchen sink in the kitchen now. That's really accurate, actually.
Yeah.
Sometimes a press kit or a quote will be like, this is our best album yet. And you're like, you listen to the album, you're like, huh, all right, fair enough. That's very, very accurate of the sound of the album. It's not, there's not really Hope That I Get Old Before I Dies.
Yeah.
Crazy things going on.
For lack of a better term, it's more mature.
It's more mature, which is like the first album has very complex ideas.
Yeah.
I don't think, okay, so here's the other thing, and this is going to come up a few times. Lyrically, and this is just my opinion, you might disagree, a lot of it is less cryptic. So whereas the first album has, you could call it impenetrable lyrics, right? Lincoln has lyrics that are just impenetrable enough, but that when you read them a few times, you're like, oh, I get it, right? So like, let's say Anna Ing, for example.
Yeah, example.
So you're just like, on first listen, you go, huh? Then second listen or reading the lyrics, you go, oh, and then you're kind of blown away because you get it, right? Lincoln to me has more songs that you get than the first album.
So the first album is more puzzles without any answers. The second album is a puzzle, and again, they give you some more clues and answers.
Yeah. So I think they hate the idea of their songs being called puzzles.
Both albums are locked,
as they've said.
And the second one, they give you the key.
Yeah, I think. And again, this isn't for every song, and for sure, and in both albums. But something that I just noticed is that I think a lot of songs on Lincoln resonate hard with people, because people do understand them more than some of the songs on the first album,
Sometimes you don't want to put that much work into deciphering your favorite songs.
Yeah, but here's my point. So while so they had a period for a while where I think their lyrics were too easy to understand. We can talk about that in a few months or whatever.
Like mid-2000s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying with Lincoln. I'm saying they're no less poetic and they're no less brilliant.
But they let you in a little bit more?
Yeah, but they're just a little more like
Come along.
Oh, I get that. I understand what I'm hearing, and I really like that. So that's sort of what I wanted to start with. Like the instrumentation for this album, it's just like, it's not so much that it's acoustic-y, because there's certainly a lot of synths and stuff. So Dave, this just occurred to me, but what was your first impression when you first heard the album, if you remember first hearing it? I don't think I remember, but do you?
What I remember is a lot of the songs from the first and second album were on that sort of list of songs that you and Daniel gave me as homework.
Daniel.
For the first show that we went to. So I don't think I had the albums yet. I do know that I probably borrowed Then, the early years.
Okay, so Then the Earlier Years is a compilation. I don't know who's listed. I don't know the level. I think we've gotten some response from people who aren't super huge fans, but Then the Earlier Years is a compilation of the first two albums plus bonus tracks.
Yeah.
Boom. And knowledge in your face.
And that gives you like...
I didn't even look at Wikipedia for that, by the way.
Oh, here's your medal. That gives you sort of like, I don't know, 60, say, tracks to really get obsessed with.
Yeah. And all under 35 minutes.
Well, both those albums are like, let's ballpark at 20 tracks each, and then, like another 10, 15 bonus tracks.
Yeah.
So you guys gave me the list to work with. So that might have been a mixtape or a mix CD. Mm-hmm. And I probably borrowed Then the Earlier Years for a while.
Who wrote this list? Was it me? Was it Daniel?
I can't remember.
I was certainly in the habit of making lists. I was thinking of posting. Oh, we should say we have a Twitter. We have a Twitter now.
Yeah.
DontLetsPod, just as it sounds. And that is going to be the central hub of photos and maybe YouTube clips or fun things related to the stuff we talk about on the podcast, stuff maybe just what we think of throughout the week that has to do with the band or music maybe. And you know, we'll expand and post other stuff from me and Dave just so that you can keep tabs on us. But I already can think of a lot of things I want to post there. One thing I thought of posting was I have a printout of like a They Might Be Giants mixtape I made for a girl I had a crush on in high school. And I'm like describing every song, and I put like a picture of Flansburgh standing there, and it's pretty funny.
Did that work?
It's a long story.
All right, we'll get into it another time. We're kind of all over the map here, though. I'll just say about the Twitter. I was off Twitter because I don't really get much happiness out of it. But I'm dipping my toe back.
I don't believe that. Twitter is a wonderful place where everyone is.
But I'll dip my toe back in, and I've glanced at the Don't Let's Pod one a little bit, so this will drag me back in a little bit. We really, again, do appreciate anyone who reaches out to us. So it is fun for me
to say thank you to the people who are liking our. We don't have tons of followers yet because we're new, but there's been already some nice support.
What were you saying before that? My impressions of
what did you think of the album at first?
Lincoln was definitely a standout for me. I felt like again, as we talked about before, the first album is weirder. And a little less accessible for new fans. The second album, I think, was a little bit more straightforward and had a lot of just really great pop songs all in a row. So that one very quickly started to get into my brain as a favorite.
Man, I don't want to. When I was preparing for this and listening to the album, I was like, how am I going to not sound insanely like in love with this? All I can think to say sometimes is just because it's a perfect musical experience. That's wonderful, and every song is beautiful and wonderful. So of course, not that that's very insightful, but there is something extremely appealing about the music on this album. Again, like I said, it's like the chord progressions or something. Everything's just like so nice to hear. And again, I don't know if they've done that ever again. It's subtle. It's subtle. It's not that their other songs on other albums aren't nice in that way. But when we get to the songs, I'll point it out.
It produces a warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, there's a warmth. That's what I meant. There's a warmth to this album, even despite the coldness of the synths, and which I want to get into because I actually find some of the juxtaposition to be a little interesting.
So do you want to jump in to the track by track? Or did you have something to say
There's
about
a couple more things about Lincoln. So Linnell mentioned that it was originally going to be called Lincoln Calling
Yeah,
as
I
a
read
parody of London Calling. Now,
I'm really glad they didn't do that.
that would have been a horrible idea. Yeah, you're right with me here. That would have been very Weird Alley, you know?
Yeah.
And you don't want to go down that weird alley. You don't know what's down there. This is actually an interesting way that they work, is that, and I think a lot of their more enigmatic or ambiguous ideas start this way, where they chip away at it until a piece of it is remaining, but just ambiguous enough that you don't know. So that's like, we have Lincoln Calling. Well, let's remove the word calling. So suddenly the concept is gone. It's not a parody of anything anymore.
Right. It's not a joke about how they're from a small town that nobody cares about.
It's not anything.
Now it's just a mysterious marker of their upbringing.
We actually grew up in a town called Lincoln, but we didn't.
But that wasn't the reason.
We didn't call it Lincoln for sentimental reasons so much as just Lincoln has this kind of. I mean, the cover has got this sort of bent America thing about it. You know, it's just basically that, you know, it's the name of a quality car and a quality president and
Quality log.
Yeah. You know, it's just everything about it just seemed very iconic and static. And that was the impetus for calling it Lincoln.
So what I want to do here, so there's a lot here. So Lincoln has a few running themes in it. And by the way, when I say running themes, they claim they don't do concept albums. I'm not saying they do concept albums. I think a lot of it is like unconscious. I think a lot of it is here's this big batch of songs. Oh, that fits with that. That fits with that. They've definitely copped to doing that, right? Like,
and they're probably in a certain zone, a certain mindset.
Mm-hmm. And there are a few moments on this album. I can think of two right off the top of my head that are very like specific, where one song really goes into the next song, like on a very specific level. But the thing that really got my brain going with this album, so I mentioned him a few weeks ago, but on the old altmusic.tmbg news group, Chris Stengel, he wrote this great thing about Lincoln once. So Chris Stengel, he used to do all these interpretations that, you know, I thought were kind of, you know, even if they were a little like strange or maybe what, you know, some might call it reaching or not, I thought they were far more interesting than what the average person was posting. He connected Lincoln, and not just the title, but, you know, sort of the theme, to the Lincoln robot that was debuted at the 64 World's Fair by Walt Disney.
Ever since I was a small boy in Illinois, I've had a great personal admiration for Abraham Lincoln. So when we decided to recreate some of the great moments in Mr. Lincoln's life for the World's Fair, we directed all our energies to that task.
Now, the 64 World's Fair comes up in the songs,
right,
not just Anna Ing. Right? Well, yeah, and Anna Ing, but then it's touched on in other places. But so I wanted to play Dave a clip of the Lincoln robot and get his reaction live on the air.
Can you face that? Oh, can you face that sucker closer to me?
As a nation of free men,
Oh my God.
we must live through all time or die by suicide. Let reverence for the law be breathed by every American.
So Dave's face,
Yeah.
I should have taken a photo. I should have
No.
done like one of those when YouTube people watch trailers,
Yeah, yeah.
live reaction.
I'll describe it.
Yeah, Dave, please.
It's a little horrifying.
I'm going to mute it and press play. Yep.
It's hypnotically horrifying.
And now there's
how,
one.
How about that?
Yeah, it's hypnotically horrifying. And there's one thing, and I'm going to post this to the Twitter. There's one thing I really wanted to point out, which is that there is a child in the audience that looks terrified. 4 minutes, 27 seconds. So Lincoln's talking, the Lincoln robot.
Yeah.
There's a kid.
He's really uncomfortable. He's about on the verge of tears.
He's almost like making the Kermit face when Kermit like squinches his face. And so why am I talking about this?
This is a real Valley of the Dolls thing.
Mm-hmm. So this premiered at the 1964 World's Fair. I don't think that's a coincidence. And I also don't think it's a coincidence that the cover of the album is, you know, microphones pointed at photos of, you know, what is to be assumed long dead people, because it's these old black and white photos of who's actually their grandparents, right? Or great grandparents. I know it's Louis T. Linnell and General Ralph Hospital. Is their names for real? Yeah, I know. And I'm not even looking at the Wikipedia for that. I
Love
know
it.
the names of their relatives because so the Lincoln album cover might be my favorite album cover. Might be. It probably is. So I just wanted to read this thing that
I like Apollo 18 because I like squids.
the reason I'm mentioning this and this is kind of paraphrased from a thing that Chris Stengel talked about, which is that the album's themes, and he says the album is about disrupting the dead and putting words in their mouths. What's important is that TMBG has replaced spots traditionally reserved for your own self-glorifying photo op with dead, voiceless versions of themselves. This lets TMBG play ambassadors to the dead, speaking out on behalf of all of our resting forefathers who have to be judged on how the decisions they made in life affected what happened next, not on the blatherings of an animatronic Disney zombie Lincoln.
Now, to recreate a truly lifelike image of Lincoln, we use our new medium of audio animatronics. To start with, we were fortunate in being able to secure this life mask of the 16th president.
What's happening here is we're connecting ideas here, right, Dave? Stay with me, Dave.
I'm here.
The idea that it's like a lot of They Might Be Giants songs are about death, and the idea that this thing premiered at the 64 World's Fair, and there's certain themes going on about just like who will speak for the dead, and what putting words in their mouths. And this is going to come up later in a really...
I'm going to say, I don't think I'm quite convinced yet, but
Okay.
I'm sure you have a lot of evidence to back it up. I'm a little...
Shit. Runs out, jumps out the window.
Let me get that from my car.
I think it's more, to me, it's almost like a subliminal kind of like thematic thing, because what that album cover reads to me as is this sort of thing. And it makes sense to me. And by the way, I'm not, when I say this is a theme, this is an idea, this could have been in the deep recesses of their minds. I'm not saying they said it out loud to each other. I'm saying they looked at this thing that their friend Brian Dewan, who I think was Linnell's roommate at the time, Brian Dewan is an instrumentalist. He's a songwriter. He's a carpenter. He's a painter. I like the man. I like what he does. I think he's incredibly creative. He builds his own instruments. I've seen him live. He built this thing. I don't know if he built it for the album cover or what they told him. I don't know the process. I'd be pretty interested, actually. I'd be pretty interested. But it sparked something in their brains, right? So I just want to make clear to the listeners, when I say this is what this is about, it's more about this is what sparked something in their brains, and maybe this is what is exciting about it. And then you have all these other connections. And the album has a very 60s feel, and it has a very colonial feel. And I was going to go into the instrumentation, how that bears that out. So there's a lot of stuff, kind of, the album is really like unified thematically, but not in some sort of ultra specific, this song's about this kind of way, but in just kind of like imagery and tones and feels throughout the album. Stop me if I'm being too floofy.
I think the album is a modern day time capsule. I see what you're saying about how it seems to be retro even when it came out, and it seems to have a built-in nostalgia theme running through a lot of it. And that might just be a leftover remnant of these songs percolating for a while and having these ideas for a while, or having something to say that's tapping into the past. That's actually a good way of saying it. There's a nostalgia feel throughout the album. Maybe that's why it has such a warm, cozy feeling for everything.
Kind of
maybe it's reminding us of something that we, the elegy, I think is the word.
And there's even the use of instruments. One thing I want to talk about, there's a lot of auto harp on the album. There's these kind of classical kind of instruments.
Well, there's themes of war, there's themes of lost love, there's themes of American history.
Yeah, in the 60s and before.
So I could see it. You won me over.
The other thing with the Lincoln robot, right? I mean, look, even just hearing Lincoln robot, their songs Become a Robot. So to me, Become a Robot is about that. Here's hoping you don't become a robot. It's almost like a warning. Here's hoping you don't become like the Lincoln animatronic, just like soullessly.
God forbid.
No, I genuinely think that these songs come from the same place, right?
But do you think that's about not becoming like a politician? or about becoming.
Well, look, obviously that song is pretty wide open, but
Yeah.
to me, it's like you could play.
I mean, the idea of a robot.
You could play Become a Robot over that footage of that I showed you, and it would really
Right.
line up, right? And then like Linnell has his House of Mayors thing, where it's the House of Mayors song, where he talks about all the wax mayors
Yeah.
speaking like animatronically, and the song really makes pains to kind of like go into detail about how. Well, it's ironic saying like how full of life they are.
The effect is so real that it's chilling to watch as the creaking automata lurch into action and act out historical deeds and make speeches, sign legislation, and turn their heads and blink their eyes.
And the whole thing with puppet heads and
I think they're obsessed with things that shouldn't be alive and act like they are alive.
exactly.
During our exhaustive research into Lincoln's life, we studied his mannerisms, his gestures, and even his voice characteristics to create a faithful likeness of this honored man. The final result is so lifelike that you might find it hard to believe. So when you visit the fair, be sure and stop by the State of Illinois Pavilion and spend a few moments with this great man.
So one other thing about this Lincoln stuff I've been telling you about with the idea of the Walt Disney zombie. So in creative writing class at SVA, I wrote a poem. I'm like so scared to show this to Dave because Dave will judge me.
Oh, I love hearing college poetry.
College poetry. I'm going to post this to the Twitter because it's hilarious. But I wrote a poem about these Lincoln theories. I did not read this to my class because I think I was too embarrassed. But at one point I say, Lincoln, Lincoln, I've been thinking, how the hell are you plugged in? Through the back of your head or the heel of your shoe? Is that even right to do? So you think about that.
I give it a B+.
Yeah. And then I mention the album cover at the end. So I say, those from the past are here under protest. A press conference shall be held and a speech shall be made. And the speech shall be no words at all. No words and no flapping wet tongues. And it's hard not to breathe when the world's unfair. That's a World's Fair pun.
Yeah, I got it.
No more misrepresentation through artificial rejuvenation. Which is also
Has a nice ring to it.
colonial pun there. Yeah, so this is something I've thought about a lot and I've been thinking about. And again, like kind of was inspired by Chris Stengel's approach to it. Look, Dave, the poem, just indulge me, all right?
Oh, I thought this whole thing was indulging you.
So this takes us right into Anna Ing.
Make a hole with a gun perpendicular to the name of this town in a desktop globe. Exit wound in a foreign nation, showing the home of the one this was written for. My apartment looks upside down from there. Water spirals the wrong way out the sink. And her voice
So wow.
Good song.
Yeah.
I like it.
Where to begin here? So this song has a very specific time and place, right?
Yes.
So it's the 64 World's Fair. There's a lot about the 64 World's Fair to talk about, and there's a lot that connects with this song. But I wanted to talk about the personal aspect of it for me first. So me and Dave live in Queens. We live right near Flushing, Queens.
Yeah.
Literally a walking distance.
And we've both been to the 64 World's Fair site.
Yeah, so the 64 World's Fair site, it's Flushing Meadows Park, and they filmed the Don't Let's Start video there.
Also plays a big part in Men in Black. For you Men in Black people.
So they filmed the Don't Let's Start video in the New York State Pavilion, and that's next to those two like towers, like lookout towers or whatever you call them, spaceships.
Yeah.
So one thing I'll post to the Twitter is I went there when I was like 16 and dressed like Linnell in the Don't Let's Start video.
Oh boy.
In black with like I don't think I had a black turtleneck, but I had a black shirt and black pants, and I jumped around and had my mom take photos of me. You weren't allowed inside of it. It was closed off. Dave is judging me very harshly right now.
What makes you think that?
The way you've sucked in your cheeks. I'll show you.
I think I have what's the opposite of a poker face.
See, here's the photos. I'm showing Dave the photos of me. I took those photos from outside the gate. There's me dancing when I was like 15. dancing outside of it.
Is that the last time you ever danced?
That is the last time I danced. I think there
like
was
no
a New
one's
Year's
watching.
where we all danced together one time, or a Halloween. But anyway,
Slow danced?
so the thing about the 64 World's Fair site is, you know, it makes me feel very warm inside because it's They Might Be Giants related.
Right.
And I went to Forest Hills High School, and it was outside the window of Forest Hills High School of most of my classes there,
Yeah.
because it's basically there's my high school, then there's a lake, and then there's where the Don't Let's Start video is filmed, right? So I would just sit in class. High school was really peak obsessed with They Might Be Giants for me, probably. Maybe junior high, actually. But high school was still going very strong, though I started to get into a couple other bands around then, like XTC and, Violent Femmes. But I would sit in my class and just stare at that site and just think about They Might Be Giants.
Of what dreams may come.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, strangely calming. I mean, it was almost like cognitive behavioral therapy. Like, high school was a very anxious time for me. Like, we were really overloaded with homework.
You were
and
like
work.
Lenny at the end of Mice and Men, where
just
look at
the 64 World's Fair location shoot, Jordan.
Yeah.
Just keep looking. Yeah. So I really would. So I wanted to get that out of the way before I go into the more documentarian aspect of it. But something, really central to Anna Ing is the 64 World's Fair site. And it's not mentioned in the song, but as relevant to the song as any lyric is the Unisphere.
Here on this very site is to be erected, they're doing it at the moment, the symbol of the theme of the New York World's Fair, the Unisphere, being built by United States Steel.
The central nexus of the World's Fair in Flushing Meadows, and this is still there, and I still go there.
Yeah.
Me and my girlfriend will walk our dog there. One time our dog destroyed a kid's soccer ball or whatever.
What a
that
dick.
They were. It was, and we handed the dad a $20 bill and walked away in shame. But we actually don't take our dog there much more.
now your dog's been banned.
Yeah,
There's a photo of her up.
yeah, on the Unisphere.
Do not let this dog play soccer.
It's like a dystopian future, and there's like a hologram of her like, floating around it. So the Unisphere,
patrol robots.
And so again, I want to give credit where credit's due. What really got me thinking about this years ago was Chris Stengel on the news group, who posted a really lengthy Anna Ing post that really. And by the way, I want to point out he did this before Wikipedia, so he actually bought books and collected things about the 64 World's Fair.
Ugh, books.
Yeah, I know. So that he could, summarize things and talk about Anna Ing. So I just wanted to read one or two little parts from it that really sums it up. So what he pointed out to everyone in terms of Anna Ing, the two central themes of the fair, the visual centerpiece was the Unisphere, a 12-story steel globe. The slogan for the expo was "Man in a Shrinking Globe," but that's not all. The whole slogan was "Man in a Shrinking Globe in an Expanding Universe."
A spectacular piece of open stainless steel sculpture, Unisphere is dedicated to man's aspirations towards peace through mutual understanding and symbolizes his achievements in an expanding universe.
It's a small world, the shrinking globe, the Unisphere, the desktop globe, but she's a small girl after all, and how are you going to find her even if it is a small world when the hiding places just keep increasing, expanding universe? So
Yeah, I dig.
So starting the song with a reference to shooting a hole in a desktop globe.
Yeah.
Then, you could Google World's Fair and see this giant globe, right? And then just connecting that with the lines, "It's a small world." There's so much to go into with this song. Dave, somebody stop me.
Oh, Jordan.